Welcome to the Property Mindset podcast, where I'm Emma Howitt, mentor, investor, and your guide to building wealth, freedom, and personal transformation through property. Property isn't just about bricks and mortar, it's about building a life that you truly desire. In this space, we don't just talk about strategy, but we deep dive into mindset. And something that I found is actually really missing in other industries, but has been a real game changer in the professional property circles. So today I'm so thrilled to be talking to Darren Burrows. Hi, Darren. How are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thanks. Thank you for having me on.
No problem at all. So Darren is local to me, so I absolutely love interviewing local legends. Darren has, years of experience in property refurbishments, HMO conversions, and really helping other people manage their projects the right way. And on top of that, 32 years in business across multiple sectors. And also, you may know him from his teaching and mentoring, and he mentors people with progressive property, especially things around sort of planning compliance and avoiding costly mistakes. Remember to hold on and stay until the end, where you will hear why Darren thinks that you must not worry about what other people think about you. So let's turn dreams into actions and actions into success. So Darren, if I might jump straight in, you have built a reputation for transforming not just properties, but also the way people approach the property business. What's the single biggest mindset shifts that's taken you from simply managing projects to truly building a legacy in property?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest mindset shifts that certainly for myself that I've kind of gone through is the kind of ability to understand you've got to kind of collaborate, delegate, outsource stuff. Because at the beginning of my journey, and I see this all the time with people, that a lot of people want to try and hold on to everything and do everything themselves. And quite often, again, certainly from the refurb point of view, people think that if they try and do it all themselves, it works out cheaper. But like a lot of things, it's kind of penny wise, pound foolish. And longer term, it tends to end up costing you more money in the long run. And quite often, the job doesn't go as smoothly as you'd hoped it would. So that was a big thing for me. I struggled with that in the beginning. I wanted to do it all myself. I'm a bit of a control freak, or certainly used to be. And I see that in a lot of other people. So that's probably the key mindset. And then to tag on to that, I guess it's a lot of the stuff that I kind of talk about and try to do in my own business is the kind of creative strategies. And again, it's a mindset shift. It's thinking away from the traditional way of doing things. So those are probably the two biggest mind shift changes.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, both of them so key, and both of them pretty scary as well, isn't it? Working with others, because you want to get the right people that you work with as well. And definitely, we all have a creative strategy. In fact, I was looking back at the ones that I've done, and I was quite like, oh, tick. It's quite nice when you've managed to get a few in there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's, just for anyone who perhaps doesn't know you, if we might sort of just go back from, your personal property journey. How'd you get started? What kind of inspired you to then sort of specialize as well in your property management?
Yeah, so I started I got my first property, apart from not buying my own home, but my first investment property was back in 2007, end of 2007, early 2008.
Wow.
Actually bought a couple at the same time in Southeast London, and we did sort of quite big refurbs on those, but we bought them with the plan of flipping them. But it was just before the crash happened. So as we were finishing them off, obviously the crash of 2008 happened, and we just decided to hold them. And then from there, sort of played it really, if I'm being honest. Played for a few years, not really doing things properly, with the benefit of hindsight, looking back, we did a lot of things wrong. And then my professional background, so prior to buying those in 2005, I got into working within the construction industry. So I worked for probably for the last just under 20 years, working for subcontract companies, co-running subcontract companies that subcontracted to big housing developers, big construction firms, principal contractors. And part of my role in that was kind of winning projects, but then doing the project management side of it as well, and running the teams of kind of various subcontractors. so that kind of transfer, that was a really good transferable skill. When I started training with Progressive in 2018, I decided to go all in. I'd been made redundant in the company I was working in, and for a few years I wanted to get back into property, but I was in a full-time job. I was busy. I was working long hours, all the rest of it. So it kind of just took a bit of a back seat. And then when I was made redundant, obviously I had time on my hands and decided to go all in on property training. So obviously I went, learnt with Progressive, learnt a lot of skills that, and techniques that I had never even heard of before. The only way I knew to do it was to, as most people, was to obviously save up deposits, buy a property, and then go from there. Um, and so, yeah, the transferable skills really for me were the kind of the project delivery, project management, contracts, all the health and safety stuff, because that was a big part of my role in my professional life. And yeah, and that kind of, and I decided to kind of niche down and focus on that as my, I guess, as I say, my focus really. Because what I found was there were a lot of people that were coming into property through the training. I've literally met thousands and thousands of people, as you can imagine, as you have, over the years. And, a lot of people come in from sectors that aren't anything to do with property or construction or, that kind of area. And when you start talking about, the basics of what you need to do to set up and structure a project and deliver a refurb or a conversion, there's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of people didn't understand that. So I kind of, it wasn't really a conscious decision at first. I just kind of fell into it. I was trying to help people and trying to give people the benefit of my experience. And then it just became apparent that there was a bit of a gap in the market.
I think this is really huge. So I was actually talking to a mentee the other day, and I'm sending him off to multiple streams of property income with Progressive. I think it's really important that you get into a big group.
Yeah.
And he was literally saying, "Oh, I'm quite frightened." And I said, "Look, let's talk about how you can really get the most of these few days with all these incredible people." And
Yeah.
he was going in with the mindset of like, "Oh, I know nothing. I know nothing about property." But he comes not as experienced as you, but he comes from a construction background. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like you are amazing. You at least go in and you know what a brick
Yeah.
look like, and you
Yeah.
know all this." Like when I started, I knew nothing about anything about property.
Yeah.
And so, absolutely, it's looking at you have some huge experience, huge transferable skills, and you've got something, with just a few support structures of some knowledge as well. You've got
Yeah.
something really amazing to add on to that. So, yeah, no, I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
So, just sort of understanding. Obviously you were employed and you were in the construction industry, but that is still quite a jump, isn't it? Going, I know you're made redundant, but what made you go, right, I'm really going to go into property from there? What was kind of like, yeah, this is definitely for me?
Well, I mean, a big part of it was, you know, although we worked for a lot of really big, like multi-million pound multinational kind of construction firms, some of also what we did was with smaller developers, like SME developers, local firms. And, I kind of got to watch what they were doing. I understood, although I wasn't involved in every single element of the construction, I got to see the programs. I'd go on site and I'd have pre-start meetings and coordinate with other trades. So, and I was watching other developers, cracking on and doing, building out schemes. And I just thought, I just wanted to try to get into that somehow. Um, so yeah, it just seemed a natural progression, really. And as I say, I had the time on my hands. When I finished my job, I kind of made a decision. I didn't want to go and work for somebody else again, really. As I say, I was kind of co-running firms with other people, so I had quite a lot of autonomy, and I wasn't really answering to anyone. And I just thought it just filled me with dread to go and get another job and be just an employee again. So I just thought, well, everything just added up and it's kind of pushed me in the right direction, I guess.
Amazing.
So yeah,
But
so
it's
that was
it's still a really big jump, isn't it? It's still a leap of
yeah,
faith. It's still a lot of things. So what is
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah,
why? Is it your family? Is it fear of failure? What is it that gets you up
yeah.
in the morning that drives you on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a family thing, as probably is with a lot of people. I've got a
Mm.
couple, wife and a couple of kids. Kids are a bit older now; they're sort of in their sort of mid to late teens. So, but yeah, I want to build a bit of a legacy, really. Build as we probably a lot of us know now, that the systems are all against us, and there's I'm not going to get political, but there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and you just got to try and be as self-reliant as possible, haven't you? And it's not, it's not something that happens overnight. It's hard work, and you know, I'll be brutally honest. Sometimes you look back and you think, have I made the right choice? Things are difficult, and it's working for yourself, being an entrepreneur, especially in property. I think where it's very, it's very up and down. There's a lot of challenges kind of thrown at you on a daily basis sometimes. But at the end of the week, you can look back and say, well, at least I'm doing it all for myself, and I'm making the decisions, and you know, you live and die by your own decisions, don't you?
Yeah, you certainly.
Um, so yeah, so yeah. My biggest why, as I say, is family really. I love a challenge. I don't like backing down on anything. So like once I've, when I have a dark day, I'll just look at myself and think, well, you've made this choice, and I just won't be beaten. So that's kind of a big why. I don't know if that's a why, but it's something that drives me on. Um, yeah, just the fighter instinct, I suppose.
I like it. I like it. Definitely a good one. And I think we have to, more and more that I speak to people, is that whatever you do, you just got to know that things are going to go wrong. And if that's going to knock you off the block immediately, you've got to really start thinking about what you're doing, because inherently you just got to be one of these people that can work through it. And with everything you do, that does come from it. So
Well,
just to,
I think everything we all do, isn't it? It's just you've got to be resilient. You've just got to, and again, it's being going back to your original question. It's mindset stuff, isn't it? It's just being, it's just understanding that as long as you just keep your head down and keep going, even if there's knocks along the way, things will work out. I never really used to be into all this universe woo-woo stuff, but over the years, certainly over recently, I think there is something in that, because, no matter how tough it gets, sometimes it always ends up turning out all right. So just got to keep at it, not give up.
yeah, I do agree. It just everything will turn out all right. That's
Yeah,
it. I
yeah,
think it's yeah, whether you're into God or the universe, if you just have that faith that you will be all right.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. So obviously you help a lot of people on with their property journeys. And obviously you're a real expert in helping others to avoid costly mistakes, basically,
Mhm.
especially around sort of compliance and planning. But just out of interest for people, what does your typical day look like now? I know you do mentoring as well, but on your sort of own projects as well as your sort of JV projects, how do they kind of
Yeah.
look like now?
Yeah, so just people often say to me, and I get it all the time when I meet, especially when I meet new people, is like, what's your strategy? And I just say I don't have a strategy. My strategy is just trying to do marketing, just trying to do as much marketing as possible.
Mm.
And that was something that was drummed into me through my previous mentors. Just market the hell out of things. So whether that's social media or kind of direct to vendor marketing, that kind of stuff, speaking to agents, or all the good stuff that we all learn. Just keep it doing that, and then whatever, because I've gone through certain trainings where I now understand in quite a lot of detail all the creative different strategies you can do. I just look at stuff that comes into me, and then I'll kind of assess it and try and work out how we solve people's problems, and then kind of secure properties that way. So that's kind of in my own business, and then it just totally depends. What it's like. There's different projects that come in. It can be a lot of my work is kind of front loaded, front heavy stuff. So, I talk, I do a lot of stuff talking to architects and dealing with structural engineers, planning consultants, fire risk assessors. So a big part of my job is pulling all of those details together, and then I kind of pull all the strings, if you like. I'm the puppet master, and I just make sure that everybody's doing everything they need to do, make sure everybody's joined up and on the same page. And then once the project is kind of done from a conception point of view, then typically what I'll do then is I'll then hand that over to the build team, and then the build team crack on and do the work, and then I'll just kind of oversee it. But yeah, a lot of the stuff at the moment is a bit of a mix. I'm doing my own stuff. I'm obviously doing training, mentoring, and coaching at Progressive. I also have my own mentees as well that I kind of work with on a much smaller scale. Um, yeah, so it's just a bit of a mix, really. It's a real mixed bag. No 2 days are the same, obviously.
I love that. I love that. And you talk about marketing, and I think that's quite a key thing that probably isn't necessarily spoken about a lot. It's kind of like, what's your strategy? What's your area? Whereas that is just really key. I mean, for somebody starting out, that can look quite overwhelming. I mean, I know sort of you and I have been sort of similar and we've sort of grown up doing sort of social media and things like that. I don't know about you, but it was not like coming on doing lives and things like that was not natural to me to start
No,
with.
no,
Um,
totally, 100%. Yeah, I agree
yeah.
with you.
So, I mean, what would you say to people now who are perhaps starting out, whether they've got experience or completely new on this marketing side? Because they're probably now thinking, oh my gosh, I've got to find my strategy, I've got to find my area. And now I've got to do all this marketing as well. How would you sort of suggest that they might start and grow with that?
So I always say, start. You want to not overwhelm yourself, number one, but with anything. Yeah, I think that's just kind of a given. Um, but and again, what we see is a lot of people they'll do a lot of different training courses, where again, whether it's a progressive or whether it's with a different provider, whatever. Um, but then they never really put any of it into action. So a big part of what we're doing is pushing people and just making sure that they're implementing what they need to do. So I always say, from a marketing point of view, start with something that's simple. So, for example, getting out and everybody needs to build relationships with estate agents. Yeah, that again, that's a bit like given. So get comfortable with doing that. Just throw yourself into it and do it. Social media is critical, and something that everybody's, well, not everybody, but a very big proportion of people say to me is, oh, I hate social media. Oh, I hate Facebook. Um, and my response to that really is just, you've got to get over yourself and just get on with it and do it, because it is a massive part. Oh, I don't like telling people what I do, but you've got to tell people what to do. That's, in property, you've got to make yourself really noticeable. You've got to stand out, make sure people know who you are. Um, and you become credible. The more you post, you become more credible. But yeah, as I say, a lot of people get uncomfortable with that. But one of the things that I say all the time is that, even in the last couple of years, like going back to when you and I sort of started getting into this space, there wasn't stuff like Chat GPT, there wasn't AI, and you had to come up, you had to think about the content yourself, you had to do all of
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? So it was much more difficult, I think, for us even. So I say to people, just use AI to your advantage. Don't let AI write your posts for you, for example, but get it to come up with some ideas, and then you can take those ideas, the backbone of it, and then put your own twist on it. So if anybody says to me, "Oh, I can't think of content," I always call them out on that and say that that's not an excuse. But yeah, really, you just got to get on with it, do it, and be consistent. Consistency always trumps knowledge and experience every day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You just got to keep at it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the whole social media thing, you know, Facebook, I remember when I very first started out and all these groups were starting, and I started out in service accommodation. And there's this one group that everyone went to, and I was kind of a bit overwhelmed and a bit frightened to, even comment because there could be a few sort of smart responses to if it was a really silly question. But
Yeah,
I learned so much from those areas and from other people's experiences, what they were doing, what things were going wrong. And that's what I always say to people. You're actually being selfish if you're not sharing that, because
yeah,
someone else is experiencing that as well. And you could really help them leg up and learn from you and not make that mistake. So it's really key. And also, I don't know if you have it, but it's being really specific as well. So I had somebody, they were on a post and they said, "Oh, I'm looking for an angel investor, um, commercial and residential." I was a bit like, oh. And anyway, I sort of wrote and sort of said, it'd be really great if you could just be really specific. Are you talking mixed use? Are you talking, just commercial? Are you talking, and what kind of residential? What kind of size deals do you do? And that's where you said, if you're talking about what you're doing, people start to know what it is, what you do. And people naturally know that you can help them
yeah.
with what they're doing, their projects. So they're going to be wanting to follow you much more. So yeah, no, I'm a I'm a
Absolutely.
total thing.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, yeah, just following on from what you said there, that's one of the big key things that I think mistakes people make, is they're not specific enough.
Mm.
And I say it all the time to people on the various different groups when they put questions on, posts on. I always say to them, if you put a vague question on, you're going to get a vague answer. If you want a specific answer, put a specific question on. Give us the. All right, you might not want to disclose every single top minute detail if it's in an open public group, but at least put a bit of meat on the bone. Obviously a lot of the stuff I look at is people asking about prices on refurbs, and and it's just you'd be amazed, well, maybe not be amazed how vague and just unspecific that people are. But anyway, that's just something you need to build on, really.
Exactly. And can you just sort of give us perhaps some examples of the projects that you've done, perhaps something that you started off with that actually really sort of started you getting you going and thinking, yeah, this is actually going to work for me.
Yeah, I mean, I've done anything from kind of sort of light refurbs to back to brick refurbs on buy to lets, flips it, that kind of stuff. HMO conversions, flat conversions, like one unit into multiple flats, commercial conversions. So I was working on a big 22 flat conversion project a little while ago. I'm in the middle of doing an office conversion for a client at the moment, where they're converting an old pub into offices and in a retail unit or a shop unit. Yeah, a bit of everything really. I don't, I'm not obviously on my own stuff. I don't really care what it is. I'll do whatever it is, and then when I'm working with either for clients, so part of my role is I'll work for clients as a consultant. So if someone's got a small project, again, a little while ago I was working with a client where they've just got a small kind of 2 up, 2 down type terrace house, need to do a refurb on it, but don't understand the processes and it's remote and all that kind of stuff. But the project doesn't, it's not a big enough job where it can warrant them paying a big fee for me to kind of project manage it. So I'll just work as a consultant for them on kind of almost like a day rate, and I'll just tell them what they need to do, when they need to do it. That way they get to learn, and next time hopefully they can do it themselves. They don't need me. So I'm a big advocate of that. Obviously, if it is a little bit bigger and it warrants a fee, then I will come in and I'll do everything. So I'll take care of all of it. So, for example, if the client normally it's where they don't have the experience and they also just haven't got the time or the inclination to do it themselves. They just want, kind of a done for you service. So that is where I kind of jump in. And then another thing that I'm getting more and more into at the moment is kind of offering out to do JVs. So, I'll say to especially people that are on the masterminds that I'm on and, mentoring clients, I'll say to them, if you find a project and the numbers all stack up, but you don't really understand what the next step is, or you're struggling to kind of structure it and get it over the line, and then you just want somebody to run the refurb, then I'd jump in and I'll JV with them. So, there's lots of different kind of facets to what I do really, but fundamentally it all comes down to the projects.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, I guess.
So somebody would be really fortunate to work with you, Darren.
Well, I think so.
Yeah, I know so. So I presume, you're not just gonna do everything. What could somebody do, behave, act, have the mindset of to make you want to work with them? Because let's be fair, not everyone we want to work with.
No, absolutely.
So what is it that you look for in a JV partner?
Yeah, and also some people wouldn't want to work with me. That's why. So the answer to that question, I would say, goes back to the social media stuff, because the more you're doing and the more visible you are, especially when you're doing things like videos, people get a bit of a feel on what you're about. I'm, let's not hide it. I'm a little bit rough around the edges sometimes. I don't mind admitting it, and I am what I am. I'm very blunt and I'm very direct and I'm to the point, and I just get on with it and I do what I've got to do. Now, if people don't like that, then they're probably not going to want to work with me. Regardless of what my skill set is, I may not be for them. And equally, I would just need to get to know that person, because I've had clients come to me before, I've had investors come to me, and I've politely declined to work with them because I just know I won't be able to work with them. We won't get on. It won't be the right working relationship. So the last thing you want to do is enter into something where you kind of have got a gut feeling from the start it's not going to work. So yeah, so it's not all about the deal. It's definitely not all about the money. It's about finding the right people. And it's just a fact of life, isn't it? I think Rob Moore said it a long time ago, and I remember him saying it. 50% of people in this world are not going to like you, and you just got to kind of accept that and find the ones that do. So the more you can get out and be visible, and you're putting your message out there to the world, people are going to kind of resonate with that. Some will, some won't. And then you just got to attract those people. So yeah, to answer your question directly. It's just I would need to get to know them. I'd need to get to know that they understand the numbers and they understand how to stack a deal first and foremost. Which is why, as I say, a lot of the people that I'm talking to about doing joint ventures tends to be from the masterminds that I'm mentoring on, because I just know that they understand the process, in varying degrees. And I'm meeting them month in, month out, and we're kind of working together, and I'm getting to understand their visions and values and all that kind of good stuff. And then, at the end of the day, you've got to work with people that you're aligned with, haven't you?
Totally. And on top of that, success breeds success, doesn't it? So you
Mhm.
get one successful project and then they might repeat that, or they might, size up. You talked about, 22 flats, so it could be a real journey. It doesn't always have to be one. And I think that's so nice once you get to know people and know them and understand it, then you actually want to work together and keep going
Yeah,
and growing along the way. So it's sort of perpetual motion, so to speak.
absolutely. Yeah.
So how about a project that you are really proud of? Doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest or, the most financially rewarding, but the one you're really proud of. And then equally, one that perhaps just everything went wrong, or it just was one that you just could not wait for it to be finished.
Wow, crikey. One that went really well it was quite local to me. It was a client. It was a couple of years ago, a few years ago. It was actually through COVID, and it was a client that I'd met at a networking event down in Kent about 2 years before. Got on pretty well with them. We weren't best friends or anything. We'd only met a couple of times, but just kind of gelled. And then out of the blue, they contacted me and said, "Would you be interested? You do project management, do you?" I said, "Well, yeah, in round terms, yeah." We met up, had a pint one night, had a chat through it all, and as I say, this particular one was a conversion, so it was a masonette above a shop. We converted it into two flats, and I just ran it kind of start to finish, took control of it all. So, I go on about the CDM hierarchy, where you've got a client, principal designer, principal contractor. I took on the role of principal designer, took care of all of the design elements of it, pulled all the architect, structural, all those other kind of professional services together. Used a builder contractor that I knew really well. Um, and yeah, and it was one of those ones. It just went really well. We had a lot of challenges with the COVID stuff. Obviously, it was like lockdown and all that the other good stuff that was going on. But we managed to navigate it, and at the end, it was a really, really nice, really nice finished product. And the client then, kept it, rented it out, and it's obviously going strong. Refinanced it. So yes, that was a really good one. But I mean, to be fair, obviously there's been several that have gone fairly well. There's none where, if I'm honest, have been a complete disaster. You always get little hiccups in every project.
Yeah.
But it's just how you overcome them, isn't it, really? It's just, in the early days, the projects that we did, I'll be honest, we probably didn't do, well, I'm not gonna say probably, we didn't do them right. We were trying to do it ourselves, and we were managing all the subbies, and we're doing a lot of the work on site ourselves, and it took longer than it should have done. But that's part of the journey, isn't it? And I probably wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have had that stepping stone if I hadn't have recognized all the stuff that I'd done wrong and then knew what I had to do to fix it. And that's some of the stuff that I try to kind of instill in people going forward is, look, I understand that you want to be involved probably in your first one, but don't be involved to the point where ends up taking you 9 months to do a project when you should have had it done in 3. Yeah, so it's stuff like that, really. So yeah, so that was probably and at the time I wouldn't say it was painful, but it just dragged on longer than it should have done. But yeah, as I say, you've got to take the good points out of every downside, haven't you?
Definitely. And it's interesting that you brought up the property that you did during COVID, because I think sometimes there was such extremes during that time. And I think just remaining okay during that period. And then on top of that, achieving a successful result in a renovation sort of thing,
Yeah,
development is really powerful and really amazing. So absolutely, I do hear a lot of
yeah,
people. And when I look back at my time, I think, wow, really not sure how all of us managed to do that with so much uncertainty and so many unknowns. So yeah,
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate because we came in on time and on
yeah,
budget.
amazing.
Yeah, so we were lucky. We managed to swerve a lot of the big problems, like obviously when plaster went up ridiculous amounts. We managed to swerve that because the contractor had stock of it and stuff like that. So it wasn't, yeah, there wasn't the volatility of the whole construction industry and suppliers didn't affect us too much. Affected us a little bit, but not dramatically. So yeah, we were lucky there.
Yeah, but jumping into that, and there's no such thing as luck, Darren. That's
No,
you
okay.
know, you had whatever you did that created that luck. But it would be really great to understand, so we've talked about the problems and the issues, and I think certainly for people starting out, that's, really frightening. But how have you over the years sort of been able to overcome these inevitable setbacks? What advice would you give around that?
Wow. You just got to be, you've got to try and be level-headed about it, I think, which was something that in the early days I used to struggle with because I used to be one of these people that threw his toys out the pram and started shouting and screaming and all that kind of stuff. But you very quickly realise that these things just happen. It's one of those things. And I'm a big advocate for, I'll say it all the time. It's all about the planning, and that's what when I say planning, I'm not talking about kind of building planning. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the actual project planning. And if you spend enough time doing all the work up front, which a lot of people don't like doing because they either don't realise you've got to do it, or people are inherently lazy, aren't they? If I'm being, again,
Yeah.
brutally honest and blunt, we all are. If there's a quick, fast way of doing something, most people want to take it. But as I say, a lot of my work is kind of really front loaded. So there's quite a lot of time and sometimes cost up front. But I always say if you can get all of those boxes ticked before you even start the project, and you've thought about all that, I'm quite analytical, and I'll take like I don't know how I do it, but I take like a holistic view of the whole project. I understand the program and what knocks on to other things, and if that goes wrong, what impacts on that have on everything else. Which anybody that has done project management should have that kind of skill set anyway. Um, and I can kind of foresee what's going to go wrong before it goes wrong a lot of the time. Obviously, not all the time, but generally speaking, that it tends to work out like that. So yeah, it's just having a bit of a plan B of if that goes wrong, what we're going to do about it, and then when it does go wrong, you can just react to it straight away. Plan for the worst, hope for the best type scenario, I think.
Yeah, like plan B, C,
Yeah,
D, E,
yeah,
F,
yeah,
F.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that being able to sort of foresee it before it's happened. And I know certainly my last project, that's what I did, sat down, what could go wrong?
Yeah.
What are the things that we have missed here that might go wrong? And I think that's really key because, inherently one of the things that cropped up, it wasn't one of the things that we thought would go wrong, but actually we'd foreseen much worse things. So actually, it was
Yeah,
kind of like, oh, okay, it's
yeah,
annoying, it's a little bit costly, but actually, my initial reaction was not like, oh, it was like, okay, let's just be methodical, work through what it does, and I think that definitely really sort of makes a lot of difference.
yeah. And I'm very conservative. I'm a very conservative, kind of risk averse type person anyway. So when I'm looking at a project, I'll always allow for a lot of things that could go wrong. I allow fairly big, hefty kind of contingencies and stuff like that. And I always say to people, you need to have contingencies. And then at least if that's all priced in, if you're working with investors, at least you can say to them, well, look, it's not ideal, but we did have a contingency in there for something, so we just use that. That's that buffer. That's what it's there for. But yeah, that's yeah, long and short of it, really.
Brilliant. And with all your years in, you talked about doing, your construction and the management and stuff. I also see that you talk about modern methods of construction. I'd love to
Yeah,
just hear a little bit more about that. Yeah, understanding why it
yeah.
interests you, why you promote it.
Yeah, so one of the companies that I used to work for and ran, going back a few years, was a renewable energy firm. So we used to do a lot of solar PV, heat pumps, all that kind of stuff, all the renewable technologies. And so that kind of gave me a real sort of insight into, I'm not an eco warrior by any stretch, but it kind of opened my eyes to just energy saving stuff, really.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of the developments we worked on back then, and a lot of the developers we worked for, and the main contractors we worked for, we had to hit certain like code standards. So I kind of got that exposed to that, understood all of that, and obviously fast forward a few years, a lot of that's the way things are going. Building regs are tightening up. We've got future home standards coming in, and everything is getting a lot stricter and tighter around insulation, and just obviously the cost of construction has gone up. So a few years ago, I spent a bit of time looking into, different, I'm very inquisitive anyway. I just love learning new stuff. So I always I find stuff and just focus on it. And obviously being in construction, it kind of helps, it all ties in. And yeah, I looked at the different modern methods of construction, kind of timber frame stuff and modular and all that stuff. And then I stumbled across something called ICF, which is insulated concrete forms. And what it is, you may have seen, you've probably seen me talk about it, but it's like hollow polystyrene Lego blocks, and you fit them all together. It is literally like building a Lego house, and then every now and again you just pour concrete into it and fill it up with concrete. So at the end of it, you end up with a really solid monolithic structure that's got solid concrete, and then you've got insulation on the inside and the outside of the building. And then all you need to do is either clad the outside or render the outside, or you can then treat it like a traditional brick and block building effectively. But it's a lot faster to put up. You're not dealing with mortar, concrete and mortar all the time. So you can work through any weathers. And then the only concrete involved is obviously when you're doing the main pour. So you can work, I've done 4 builds with that now with other people. It's been other people's builds, but I've been working on it to get the kind of knowledge and experience. And we've worked through, the one project we worked right through winter, so we were working through the coldest days.
Wow.
Another project we worked through the hottest days of the year. So yeah, I'm used to working in the extremes with it, and it doesn't make any difference. You know what I mean? It's just easy. You don't need trade, so you don't need like master craftsmen, bricklayers, and all of that kind of stuff. One of the projects, or two of the projects actually, that I worked on was with guys who we'd never used it before. So none of us were tradesmen. I'm not a tradesman by background.
Yeah.
We were just all fairly practical, and we effectively built 2 houses doing it. So you don't, once you start getting to your roof, obviously, and the more kind of niche trades, obviously you need to build people in, but the actual shell construction of the building, we did ourselves. So yeah, I've just latched onto it, and I just think it's amazing, and you can get a really great end product, very, very well insulated, really, really great U values, very acoustically efficient. You've got this solid, you're basically living in a solid structure. So if you're building on a flight path or next to a main road, you're going to be well acoustically insulated. And of course, then going forward, you need minimal heating in it, really. So yeah, that's I'm very focused on that, and that's what I want to be doing going forward. I want to get into doing build to rent, ideally, with using ICF, because I think it's a great way for me. My long-term plan is obviously to build a legacy portfolio for the kids, and it's something that, like little like Victorian terraces, has never really excited me, because in my mind I've always thought too much maintenance, too much uncertainty going forward, and problems with keeping up with EPCs. Whereas if we're building from scratch and we're building something that's really, really energy efficient from day one and really solidly built, you shouldn't have any problems with it going forward. So yeah, another stuff I'm into is infrared heating, solid state heating, which again, you've got no moving parts, so no boilers to break down, no underfloor heating to start leaking.
Yeah, we've
So
got
yeah,
infrared in our hotel.
brilliant. Yeah, it's
Mm.
great, isn't it?
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a big one for, as I say, because of my background, I'm a big one for like looking at all the different technologies, pulling
Mm.
it all together in one package, and then just using that.
Yeah. And also it sounds like it kind of really plays into what you love doing, which is that kind of whole planning up front, because
Yeah,
presumably
yeah,
you've basically, you're not going, oh, I think we might put a block here. I mean, it must be architecturally very exact. The blocks must all have to be made two specific ways, and then you plonk them all together. Is that right?
Yeah, to a point. I mean,
Mm.
you can. So if you've got planning for a kind of standard brick and block house, let's say for example, you can then change. So one of the projects that I did that I was involved in, the first one that I got involved with was exactly that. So it was a self builder. He was building his own home, but it's kind of like forever dream home. And right at the last minute, he stumbled across ICF, decided he was going to change to it. So we just worked to the original plans. So the ICF blocks, you can cut them down. Um, but you can only cut them at certain points. So it was just a case of like there was a bit more kind of jiggery pokery involved, and there was more waste than normally you would have had. There wasn't a lot of waste, but there was more than you would have had. But in an ideal scenario, yes, you'd have the building designed to optimize the block sizes.
Mm.
So you'd pretty much get away with zero waste on site, which is again just another byproduct of using that system. As I say, it's very light, it's very easy to transport around the site. As I say, it's not, you could have, if you wanted to have a kid, I've got a teenage son. You can have kids helping you out if you needed to. And it's not like they're lugging pallets of bricks around. Every block is really lightweight, so it's very, from a health and safety point of view as well. It's you know manual handling and lifting and that kind of stuff. It sort of just makes it for a lot safer site. Um, but yeah, so very, I'm a big fan. But yeah, it's all about what ifs. What if that happens? What technology we're going to use with that? How does it integrate with that? Just pulling it all together.
Yeah, I love that. And I love all these kind of different things. I think it's so important, as you say, learning, understanding. It might not be for you, but at least having that kind of basic of understanding. And it sounds like, yeah, it really does tick a lot of a lot of boxes. I was
Yeah,
just imagining, you know, the bricklayers with just this huge thing of bricks, and you're just walking around with polystyrene. That's
yeah,
really quite tremendous, isn't it?
exactly.
And then there was another one that you speak about, which is spray cork. Can
Yep.
you talk a little bit about that as well? These are all
Yeah.
kind of perhaps new things. Well, certainly it is for me as well. What's that?
Yeah, so again, that's another kind of knock-on byproduct, really, of the whole eco and insulation side of things. So yeah, so one of my companies, we also kind of contract. So we work for clients. It's kind of, if you like, it's a bit of a side thing for me. I set it up so that if I've got people that I work with that have got projects in and around sort of South London and Kent, then we can obviously do refurb work for them. But again, part of what we do as well is spray cork. Yeah, so we can either spray it on externally on buildings or internally, and it can either be used, if it goes on externally, wherever you use it, it's an insulating coating. So it only goes on about 3 or 4 mil thick. But because it's made of cork, it's basically granule. It's a byproduct of the cork industry. So
Yeah.
in Spain and Portugal, they obviously strip the bark of the cork trees. It's very, very sustainable. So a cork tree will live, I think it's something like 230, 250 years. Every 7 or 8 years, I believe it is, they'll harvest the cork. So they'll go to the cork tree and they'll strip all the bark off. And the bark kind of comes off at that thickness. By doing that, that then regenerates the tree, and it produces, or sorry, it absorbs more carbon from the atmosphere to regenerate and grow its bark again. So it's actually pulling more carbon out of the atmosphere than it's actually producing when you use it. So it's carbon negative. And then the bark, the cork bark, then goes to like the cork manufacturing, where they press it to get cork for wine bottles and all that kind of stuff. All the bits that are left over that are basically waste go into a big chipper, and it comes out as kind of different grades of granules. We then mix it up with, I say we, the manufacturers then mix it up with kind of a resin, and we get it, and then we can use it as a spray compound. So as I say, we spray it on very, very thin, and because of the kind of the molecular structure of cork, obviously a lot of air in it, and so it's a really, really great insulator. So even at really tiny thicknesses, depths, it's a great insulation solution. So if you put it on the external, it comes in different colors. So if we put it on externally, it's flexible because of the resin that it's in, flexible, so it never cracks over time. And it can kind of be decorative as well. So if you've got a house that's, it's been rendered 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever it may be, or pebble dash, for example, and it's starting to look tired and cracking and getting problems, we can literally spray over that with a bit of preparation work. We can spray over that, and you'll have a brand new, it'll give it a brand new lease of life. It will look phenomenal. It will never need any maintenance apart from the odd jet wash down here and there, maybe. And also the added bonus is it will actually insulate your house. On the flip side of that, we can also do it internally. So we're currently talking to some councils and housing associations where mold is obviously a big problem at the moment, and I think
Yeah.
it is for everybody. Because of the way we now treat our houses. We have old houses, like a lot of us live in kind of like the Victorian houses or even kind of 1930s,
Yeah.
where the insulation is not as great as it could be. And in the winter or the colder months, you've got cold surfaces, cold external walls, all the moisture in the house that we all produce nowadays with modern living gets attracted to that cold surface, and that's where we get mold. What we can do is we come in and we can spray, or actually with this particular product, we can trowel it on. So it's quite really, really quick and easy to do. Trowel on caulk onto the bare substrate of the wall. We then skim over it with a plaster. If you're going onto like a Victorian or period type building where it's got solid walls, the caulk is actually breathable. So the caulk product is a breathable product. We use a breathable plaster and then a breathable paint, and then you're back to having a fully breathable, porous building, which is how they were designed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were designed single skin, lime plaster on the inside, which is breathable, and nothing on the outside. But what's happened is over the years, people have rendered the outside or they painted the outside, so the outside doesn't breathe. The inside, over the years, we've used gypsum plaster, so that doesn't breathe. So what happens is if moisture ever gets into the building, that's when it traps that cold and wet element, and that's when we get problems. It starts creating the mold problems. So yeah, so it's a really, really good.
And how does it compare sort of price wise? So if you were to go and, paint an exterior of a house or use something like the cork spraying, what is it, vastly more expensive? Is it comparable?
It's probably a little bit more. So when we look at it again, so on the external, if you were comparing it against something like silicon render, monocouche, something like that, then it's kind of similar cost, maybe a little bit more expensive, but not huge, not like double the price. Internally, there's nothing it compares to really, because the only other solution internally is to put like 100 mil PIR insulation internally.
Right.
And the problem with that is you're then losing 100 mil plus all your other, your skim and etc. on your internal walls. So especially if you're doing it on something like, let's say for example, an HMO, the last thing you want to be doing, if you've got a room that's kind of just on the size boundaries, the last thing you want to be doing is losing 100 mil off of that wall. So it's, and then the added benefit of that is you don't have to remove sockets and switches and architrave and skirting, because 4 mil will just go straight on, and you don't need to remove anything. So it's classed as what they call a TIWI, which is thin internal wall insulation. And yeah, it just gives you phenomenal insulation, and a great solution for not a lot of time and hassle. The only downside to it, full exclusivity, is that at the moment it's not recognised by the SAP calculations for EPCs. But that's something we're working on with the manufacturers, is to get that into get that approved by like BBA or one of the other testing centres that will then, so the guys can then plug that into their EPC surveys, and it will benefit it. But there's plenty of people out there that don't need it for EPCs. They just need it because they've got a massive mold problem. Massive damp condensation problem.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of changes that need to be made, don't they, to incorporate all of these new things. They want everyone to be like renewable energies and be more eco, but they're not actually taking into consideration a lot of these new modern, very beneficial elements there. So I love that.
Yeah,
amazing.
It's like the infrared, like you mentioned, the infrared heating. Infrared's not recognised. It's very, very efficient, but it's not recognised on EPCs. If you've got electric infrared heating, you just have to plug it in as an electric storage heater, which gives you a really crap EPC rating.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely needs a massive overhaul.
Yeah, totally agree. So, you are a fantastic person to have around when you're doing any kind of projects and things like that. But then you also mentor as well. What kind of made you, is that something that you've always enjoyed? What made you move over into that as well? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you were picked up as being, a fantastic person. But again, it's a big thing. What made you jump into that as well?
Yeah, so I guess I've always done. I mean, I've had mentors obviously throughout business. Once I kind of understood what a mentor was, and if I'm being honest, that's probably only since I started doing my own personal development journey, sort of 2018 onwards.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, looking back with hindsight, I think, oh right, yeah, that okay, that yeah, so that teacher was a mentor, that that family friend was a mentor, that guy I used to work with was a mentor.
Yeah.
So I guess I've always been, from quite early on, I was running teams within the businesses that I was involved in. So, I had sales teams under me in different businesses, and obviously once I got into more than the project side, I had kind of people under me. Um, so I guess I was kind of a mentor without realizing I was a mentor. And then um, in my own business, kind of 2017, 2018, 2019, I started because I just found that there were so many people getting into property that needed help, like
Yeah.
proper hand holding, by their own admission. I started doing coaching and mentoring, like within my own business. Um, and then it just kind of happened, really. My mentor within, or one of my mentors within Progressive, just approached me one day and said, would you be, you're always kind of helping people, and you're very active in the Facebook groups and always answering questions and stuff. Would you be interested in becoming a mentor? And the rest is history. So that was probably a couple of years ago. Um, so yeah, so now I kind of do it officially for, as I say, within Progressive Property. But yeah, I love it. I really enjoy just helping people and just trying to give the benefit of my experience, I guess. Um, just like the giving back bit. And as I say, it for me, from a selfish point of view, it helps me position myself. Going back to what I said about the JVs.
Yeah.
I'm helping people, but if they like what I'm saying and they get on with me and they feel they want to work with me, then further down the line, there's always that opportunity, isn't there? So it's always like a two way street, I think, with this stuff.
Totally, totally. Well, obviously, this is property mindset. What do you see as the biggest kind of mental trap that new property investors can fall into?
Yeah, there's probably a few, but one of them is comparing themselves to others.
Oh my gosh.
And probably a
Yeah.
lot a lot of people say that, but
Yeah.
and to be fair, I sometimes do even still fall into that trap, only for a split second, but I do sometimes. I'll
Yeah.
be on Facebook, and I spend a lot of time on social media because I'm always either putting stuff out there, or I'm always trawling it for potential projects or clients,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. But I always, I see, so I'll see what other people are doing, and I'm like, oh, they started at the same time as me, and they're doing this, and I haven't done that yet, but luckily I'm self-aware enough now over the years of personal development, I think, that I catch myself quickly, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, right, stop it, move on. But I hear it from a lot of people. Everyone's like, and it can be quite debilitating, I think, and quite depressing when they see other people doing stuff and they're
Yeah.
not doing it. It's that shiny pennies thing, isn't it? Grass is always greener and all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing. Get out of that mindset that
Yeah.
don't worry. You're on your own path, your own journey. Don't worry about what other people are doing.
Yeah.
Different people are different people. Everyone's got different skill sets. Everyone's got different personalities. Everyone's
Yeah.
got different ways of doing things,
Different resources, so
different
many different
resources,
things.
different areas of the country. That I think has a big. Well, I don't think I know that has a big impact. I
Mm,
think some things work better and quicker and easier in some parts of the country. They do in other parts of the country. It's just a
absolutely.
fact. So yeah, so don't compare yourself to others. Um, don't worry about what other people think. Yeah, what other people
Mm.
think of you is none of your business.
Oh, I
Um,
totally agree with that one. Yeah.
and again, that is something that's a mindset, a huge mindset thing that people worry about. And again, I had that myself in the early stages. I was. You mentioned it earlier on about doing like. Did we ever think we'd be doing lives, and did we ever think we'd be doing stuff on YouTube and wherever we are? I never thought I would be on a stage training, 30, 40, 50, 60 people, talking in networking events in front of 100 people.
Yeah.
Back in my, in my job days, I've always been I like to think, a reasonably confident bloke, but I would never get up. I mean, a few times I got up on stage and kind of trained small groups of people, but it petrified the life out of me. Um, but that's just the personal development journey you go on, isn't it? And just pushing yourself out your comfort zone all the time. But yeah, don't worry about what people think about you. You know, in the early days, I wouldn't post as much on social media on my own profile because I was worried about what all my mates would say because they're all piss takers and you know we rip it out of each other.
Yeah.
Um, but I just got over it. You know, again, you know, some of the mentors that I had at the time, you just said, you know, don't worry about it. You know, these people are not putting food on your table, are they? So you've just got to do what's right for you. You've got to, you know, it's your business, it's your life. You've got to just crack on and do it. And you know, in my case, they got bored with it after a week. So you know, they did, you know, it wasn't a laugh anymore, was it? So you just get on with it. And if people don't like you, as I said earlier on, if people don't like it, they can take it or leave it. If they don't like me, scroll to the next one, or turn me off, or whatever. You know, if you do like what I'm saying, then listen. You know, give me a like and a comment. If you don't, then get on with it.
I love it. I love it. So just one final question, and before we jump into the quick fire round, if you could go back, and I want this to be really personal, not kind of everyone else, but just for you and your journey, if you could go back and give your younger self one mindset tip that could have really helped you along the way, what would it be?
From a mindset point of view, it would probably be don't worry about what other people think. Because I've always been, although I've been reasonably confident, I've always been very kind of self-critical
Yeah.
and just yeah, just worried about what other people think about me all the time. So yeah, so it's probably that, to be fair. Yeah, and I think I probably would. I don't know, well, would I be further on? I don't know. But I think you do. I think I probably would have achieved other things, different things, if I hadn't been like that. But hey
And
ho.
change and being able to change that, because we can just say, can't we? Oh, I just oh, 1 minute I care about what people think, and now I don't. It's not always that
Oh, no,
easy,
no, no,
is
no, no.
it? So
No.
how have you managed to get from, and I'm sure there are still times where it can't, and I certainly do. I'm thinking about it now. I suddenly go, and then I have my processes of going through. What's kind of your process of taking that kind of feeling and making it so it's not a negative impact?
You know what? I was gonna say I read a book. I listened to a book a few years ago. Mel Robbins, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Although I think it's called the 5 second rule. But yeah, but she says when you think you want to do something, just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and just do it. Don't over because it doesn't give you enough time to overthink it.
Yeah.
And that is, and again, I've done kind of training and coaching and stuff on kind of intuition and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's the same thing. If you get an intuition, and I do it now, so I do it sometimes I do it subconsciously, but I do it consciously sometimes, where I'll think, oh, I haven't spoken to them for ages, or maybe I should send them. Oh, there was that project we were thinking about like 6 months ago. Maybe I should, and I send them a message then, or I'll make the phone call then, and something comes of it.
Uh,
Whereas if you ignore it, you're never going to know, are you? So you've just got. So I know that's not directly about kind of not worrying about what people think, but I think, yeah, if you want to post, if you want to post a video, or you want to put a post out on social media, or if you want to do something and you're worried, or like going into a estate agency is a good one for people because quite often at the start of their journey, if you're not a massively confident person, or you feel that everyone puts estate agents on a pedestal, don't they? They think they know everything. Quite often they don't. Yeah,
yeah.
I've got mates who are estate agents that have been estate agents for like decades, 30 or 30 plus years, and I talk to them, and they're very good at their job. Don't get me wrong, but they don't know everything.
It's quite a limited,
So
isn't it? It's very linear what they know.
yeah,
It's not
but, yeah,
not really like what you do.
they know the traditional stuff. They know
Yeah.
the traditional way of selling a house. And also, without sounding derogatory, a lot of estate agents or people who work in estate agents might have only been there 5 minutes. They might have been, you get kids in there, they might have been working at McDonald's or Tesco's or something, a month ago, and they're now working for an estate agent. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't mean that they know a hell of a lot more than you. And especially if you've done property training, or if you've educated by reading books and watching YouTube channels and all that kind of stuff, and you understand this stuff, I would argue more than a hell of a lot of estate agents. So again, if you're standing outside the estate agents and you want to go in and you want to speak to them and see what they've got, but you're nervous, just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and just walk in and do it. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're not going to die. Yeah. The worst that'll happen is they'll turn around and say, no, we haven't got anything to suit you. and then you just walk out and you go to the next one.
But I love it. Very, very powerful there. Got quick fire round, if that's
Oh,
okay.
oh, quick fire.
It's
Go
not
on
that
then.
exciting, but I quite like it. So, who has shaped your property journey the most?
Um, so naming names, I'll say Kevin McDonald. So,
Oh,
so, so
lovely,
he's
Kevin.
so he's my mentor at Progressive.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So through his training and working with him closely, yeah, they're 100%. Yeah.
that. And what book has influenced your mindset the most?
Oh, probably the first one. I've read a lot, or I say read. I tend to listen to them on Audible, but I would say probably Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Ah,
That was
right,
the
the
first.
pivotal.
Yeah, it was the first book I was told to read when I first started getting into property training. So yeah.
Okay. Now, if you could only invest in one type of property, what would it be and why?
Wow. I because as I said at the beginning, I don't like pigeonholing too much. Well, it's not really invest. Well, I suppose it is investing, but I like flips
Okay.
or assisted sales. I always look for assisted sales,
Mm.
purely because. But I suppose that's not a long-term investment, but for chunky money, purely because I just love the project element of it. I just love seeing taking something from an ugly duckling to being a finished product. Um, and I'm not a big fan, especially now, whereas it's getting tight and tight of all the rules and regulations and like renters reform, all that kind of stuff. Now, and obviously, I'm not saying that all the other strategies work, but for me, I, I'm I'm quite going back to what I said earlier on about it's all being inherent and lazy. I'm quite a lazy person from that respect. I don't want all the paperwork and the aggro. So yes, that's just a personal thing. But other than that, I mean, listen, buy to lets are great. If you can find the right one, it's just whether. But I'll tell you what, no, sorry, I've changed my mind. Tenant buyers.
Oh, love it. Yeah.
So yeah, so I've done a few tenant buyer deals. I love tenant buyers because
Yeah. I've got one of those.
yeah, it's great. Yeah,
Unbelievable. I went around the other day for the property to be valued. She'd put in a new kitchen.
yeah, yeah. I've got one at the moment. The week they moved in, they put a new kitchen in, did all the flooring. Yeah, it's brilliant. Because you're helping, listen, you're helping whether it's a landlord or whether it's a vendor looking to sell, you're helping the tenant because you're helping them get on the property ladder eventually. And you're helping your investors. So obviously I'm always constantly looking to work with investors and it's a really good, safe, it's probably, I would argue that it's probably the most passive property investment strategy
And I
because
also,
you've got no
to
risk.
reiterate that with the tenant, uh, there's so many people out there that should be in houses that they own.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that are holding them back. Doesn't make them bad people. They're not bad, not necessarily anything that's bad about them. There's just something that's just holding them back.
Yeah.
And this helps. I mean, lady that I meant mentor on my mindset stuff. She's just done two, and it's just so good all round, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just like a
Phenomenal.
win-win, good feeling all
Yeah.
round. It's I'm with you on that one. Brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
So, Darren, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I
Welcome.
mean, we've covered so much here. But where I know you're all over social media, but where can people find you if they wanted to come and work with you, whether that's mentoring or JVing? Where's the best place for them to come and get you?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I'm active I'm particularly active on Facebook,
Mm.
Facebook and LinkedIn. Um, crikey. Well, what I'll do, I'll give you my link tree comment, and maybe we pop it in
Yeah,
the
pop it in the show
pop it in
notes.
the show notes and
Yeah,
pop it in the
absolutely.
in the comments and etc. But yeah, I mean, you obviously I'll drop my link tree, and then obviously you've got access to all my different titles. My website is taurus-property.com. So again, if you're interested in, well, regardless of whether you want to work with me from a mentoring point of view, coaching point of view, investing point of view, whatever, you can reach me there. But yeah, whatever's easier. I'm across everything, so whatever works.
I absolutely love it. Well, thank you so, so much. I really appreciate your time and effort. And for me, uh, what I've really taken from today is this opportunity to make all our lives easier by doing a joint venture with somebody who has the experience that perhaps you don't. I think that's really powerful. And also this whole thing about I don't think there's anything I don't think we have luck. You just do things and for instance, stop comparing yourself and stop thinking about what do other people think about. And those things are, really, really key. So thanks again, Darren.
Thank you.
Remember, guys, that property success isn't just about what you do, it's about how you think. And when you combine a strong strategy with an unstoppable mindset, there's literally no limit to what you can achieve. So do reflect on everything that Darren has said today and think about, well, what is one action that I can take to help me move closer to my property goals? And if you need any more help, just go and follow Darren and he will do that. And if you know somebody who is struggling on their property journey, please do share this episode. It could be the game changer that they need. And as Darren does, remember that the more people we help ourselves, then actually the greater our own wealth in every sense of the word. Growing this community means growing the potential that we all have to succeed. So do remember, your mindset is your greatest property. Keep building it.